everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Andrew, also known as GingerHacker, and I'm very excited to have with us today on the show Ben Siegel, who one of my good colleagues I've met here in the last year, thanks to a great colleague of mine, Cassidy. And Ben, so glad to have you on the channel, and I'm going to pass it to you for a quick introduction.
I love it, Andrew. Thank you so much for inviting me on. Quick intro to myself. My name is Ben Siegel. I'm the founder and CEO of the CyberNest and CyberSynapse. I'm also an executive producer of a cooking show called Cooking with CISOs that hopefully folks have seen blasted all over their LinkedIn, because that is the absolute goal. And so we operate an ecosystem of brands. So CyberNest is a specialized expert network where essentially we have over 1,000 security leaders who create profiles, they share OSINT intelligence, and we bring them research and advisory engagements where they can share their knowledge and experience and be in control of the information they share and benefit from it. CyberSynapse is really the activation layer. So we work pretty hand in hand with go-to-market teams who are really trying to understand market and product validation. They don't really understand how tools are adopted, or there's gaps in that understanding. And so what we enable them to do is get that proprietary data directly from those like yourself, Andrew, who are doing the foundational work instead of copying competitors and working with traditional research firms. And then the show is really our way of taking leaders in the network and doing something uniquely different, but something that is fun and stops the scroll. But it's about how do we show a side of the leader behind the title and also like the truth behind the tech in a really organic way. And so I know that was long-winded, but that is a nutshell I am.
No, that's amazing, Ben. And I'm excited because we're going to be diving into a few of those in particular today for the questions. But we're going to go ahead and hit you with the one that we always hit our folks on the show with, which is the OG story. So way back back in junior high school, even elementary school, we have our career days. We have what do you want to be when you grow up, where we're drawing pictures of doctors and lawyers and dentists and astronauts and famous football players or pop stars. But obviously we go within the cyber realm. So do you mind sharing your story of how you got to where you are today, or how did you break into cyber?
So really interesting entry point. So I first was exposed to cybersecurity through Gartner. I spent 6.5 years working in their emerging tech team and then specialized on the cyber side. And so that was like the first entry point into technology and advisory, and this idea of there's CIOs and CISOs, then there's those who are trying to build new technology to serve them. And then there's these intermediaries that are the source of truth and in some ways move markets. So that's what I was told at the time, right? Nobody buys anything without talking to a Gartner analyst was really what we were told. And largely seeing that intimately was the first exposure. I had a bunch of security leaders that I met through my time at Gartner. And when I left Gartner, I just loved the industry. I just was like, this is fast paced. The people are just amazing. They're not just technical, but they're also like mission driven, and they're very much focused around how do we actually protect people and products and IP and all these things. And so I just wanted to stay in the industry, and that led into what became the founding thesis of CyberNest, which was the bad guys are sharing, the good guys need to share. Can we build scalable technology that helps practitioners do that more effectively and actually puts them in control of the information they share? They benefit from it. They're part of the value creation. And we've been building this for over 4 years, really brick by brick. It started with about 100 security leaders. Now we've grown pretty organic, and it's great to have you, Andrew, in the network and someone who is on the platform as well.
No, and it actually ties into my first question I wanted to hit with, and that's what you're doing with building that gap between vendors and practitioners. So with CyberSynapse and CyberNest, you're really taking a good approach on letting folks talk to security practitioners that are actually doing the busy work, or I say being like the worker bees of an organization. But when you're going through this process, did you see anything of a big disconnect between cybersecurity vendors and practitioners of who you're now trying to serve, how both sides can do their job better by just understanding and talking to each other more?
Absolutely. I think there's a few things at play. I think as a practitioner, you need vendors, right? You need the ecosystem. You can't do the job successfully without. That being said, there's a lot of barriers to actually being able to share, hey, what's happening in my environment, what's going on day-to-day basis. And you need to share that as a practitioner because they need to solve those challenges or work hand in hand with you to do so. I think traditionally there's been just an overwhelming amount of vendors in this space, which makes that hard. And then also intermediaries like traditional analyst firms and maybe value-added resellers and these different players who become that source of truth. But what it oftentimes is, it puts the vendor really at a disadvantage because they're not actually getting the great data and insight that can actually help you better protect yourself. So I think it's some of like old systems and barriers that existed today. I also think that vendors, when you look at how they're actually going to market, they don't have a lot of proprietary data sets. They're making a lot of assumptions. They're maybe taking a small subsegment of what they're hearing. Their investors might be telling them a thesis, which oftentimes might be well aligned, but again, it hasn't been validated from actual people doing the work. And so because of that, what happens is like a lot of these companies copy competitors, or they copy like the analyst reports say, and then everyone starts just saying the same thing. And so what is like the real gap here is that nobody has proprietary data, right? Like, who has the information that says, look, I know nobody else has this because I've done the foundational work and I can actually use this to build a better product and a better company. And those are the types of things that we pay attention to and focus on, is creating better systems and workflows, and also forging those relationships direct. So you're not working through so many intermediaries or so many deductions of information. By the time you get it, it's like maybe a bad game of telephone. You're like, was this actually what was said or actually happening? Or this was someone's interpretation?
Info sharing, it's funny because like you say, oh, Rapid7 has the best one. No, Mandiant has the best one. No, Palo Alto has the best intelligence or stuff that's going on. And then you get all of them that's like, they all relatively say the same thing. You're like, oh, well, okay, well, no one's really doing that. I think like you said, like the nitty gritty dive in work to like fully connect the dots. It's like very sometimes like high level, and then there's assumptions that get made. And I think with those assumptions are definitely a high risk to a lot of organizations until they can really, I think, solidify that source of truth, and then identifying all those additional resources that are actually being provided in the reports. And that's the same thing from your CISO level to your worker bees to your proprietary information that folks say, no, this is only we know this. And then you pay the dollar, and then it's like, oh man, we knew this last week.
And it's also speed, right? Like if you're doing the foundational work and you're doing it in real time, like you're getting signal then and there. If you wait until that next report comes out, or your competitor launches that thing, or you get rustlings, right? It's not at the point of time that's most valuable. But I think as a practitioner, right, you trust your peers more than anyone else. As much as there's all this information out there, you're always going to go to folks and say, look, here's my problem. I really want to understand like who's actually solving this well, and give me a piece, like peek behind the curtain into like what it looks like to actually implement this thing. Like they're telling me all these things, but like I need to make sure that it actually is going to do what it says it's done. And the best way to know that is from social proof from others.
100%.
And that I think is the driving force behind a lot of this industry in general.
Well, tying this into a great second question. So breaking into cyber beyond the technical skills. Now you've gotten to chat with many different leaders, founders, CISOs, and security teams on maybe what's really important to them when it comes into non-technical skills and even those technical skills. Do you see any consistencies that separate cybersecurity professionals of what they can maybe separate themselves to be the best candidate that leaderships are really looking for?
I think there's a few. By all means, one of the leading indicators that I see come up a lot is, how does the business make money? Like that's a core part of foundationally. We're not talking tech, we're not talking security. Like how does the business operate? Like how do they make money? How does the team work effectively? Who's like like who are the stakeholders involved? And so it's like, that's the first question, is like, you have to be business minded. And we hear a lot about that, right? Like nobody understands the security use case until they understand like what it means to them in like making money, protecting IP, saving money, these pillars. So I think that's really important, is being able to really be like, have the business acumen, and people talk a lot about that. I think after that, it's prioritization, right? Like what is acceptable risk? I think a lot of vendors look at it and go, oh, I found this new attack surface. And we're going to like, if I just get in the room and I tell people about it, they're writing checks. And oftentimes what they find out is like, it's a problem. It's interesting. Is it a real problem? How mature is that problem today? And what are all the other problems that ultimately we need to solve first before that? And so I think it is very much, okay, there are so many risks out there. Nobody's denying that. But like, how do you build a strategy?
Being able to identify, build like a pipeline to help the team or company grow, saying, hey, I observed this is why it's important. This is why or how it can or not make us money or save us money. Because a lot of organizations, Like the security team is not usually, unless you're an MSP, security team is not a revenue generating piece of the foundation, right? It is in a sense, I don't want to say this in a negative way, it's a leech, but it's a very secure leech. We're protecting the business, we're protecting the data, we're protecting DLP, we're protecting ransomware attacks. So very much agreeable that it's like being able to see how or why the security aspect or an individual can say, hey, me being on this team is going to expedite your mean time to close or mean time to respond on these alerts or identifications that clients are validly concerned about. Because if we have a CVE or some type of alert that's going through that has a high criticality that could really damage the organization, and it takes one person a week to take care of, but it could take you 2 days. Well, that person that can take care of it in 2 days is probably a better hire, as long as the work is to the code and standard that they need.
I think you touched on a really important point, right? It's like, it is seen as a cost center, but it's a cost center that obviously de-risks what could be really expensive issues and problems. But I've noticed a third trend that I think for those who are like, what are you seeing from security leaders that I value and I look to with deep respect? They definitely understand how the business makes money. They definitely have a very clear answer of what acceptable risk is and how they prioritize. And then the third, and this translates into the show, is they know how to create analogies that are non-security related that people understand. They're really good at being able to break things down, not through like, this is a risk, this is what it's going to cost us, here's why it's broken, here are all the interconnected issues, but they can parlay that into something that's like more acceptable. So I'll give you an example. So like, we obviously love cooking. We create a cooking show. There's a lot about cooking that's really interesting in security. You have to prepare. Things don't go as planned, right? You have to be methodical. And so I'll give you an example. So I was cooking with Ty Sabano, which, shout out Ty if you're listening to this, and the burners completely circuited. So we like lost power.
Oh no.
And what I noticed in Ty, if I can just speak to Ty and see someone I deeply respect, is that he immediately not just was so calm, but he went immediately into checking the environment. Everyone's focusing crazy. He's looking at what cameras are on, what systems are off. He was more in the identification of what's happening, and he was really good at it. And when he identified the issue before I even knew there was an issue, then he broke it down. We ended up fixing it. But what happened is when we were actually stopped, he started putting me to work. And so he tells this story around how actually in incident response, when you identify something that's broken, you actually block and tackle. You need to create tasks for everyone to solve for it in real time. In our case, it was like chopping onions and making sure that things kept going as planned. But he did it in a way that I thought was really interesting. And it's those types of stories that I think make people understand security in a way that's a little bit more digestible.
I think a lot of folks don't really realize, I think, like being a strong leader not only means leading from the front, but like also knowing who your strong players are. So it's like being able to reach out to specific teams, knowing your environment, knowing who you can reach out to or give someone an Eve task, whether they're junior, mid, or senior level, like saying, hey, I know this analyst or engineer is really solid at network analogy. Let's have them start working on this. And then divvying up those tasks where it's like not falling on a single point of failure or a single team. And those leadership traits are huge. And I think that actually falls into my next question perfectly is, and this is more of a fun question, but so with your Cooking with CISOs series you guys have been running, has there been a favorite meal, and that you can do another shout out to whatever CISO made this meal, that they've actually gotten to cook on the show?
Andrew, you're putting me on the spot because I have to be unbiased in the way that I critique. God, we've cooked so many amazing meals. Truly, I was talking about, I cooked a Japanese curry dish that was like
I love
that I cooked for my wife, and she loved it, and that's personal to me because I was on the episode. But we have cooked shakshuka, we've cooked like short rib. This format really brings out the chefs, and it also brings out the stories that are personal, from like Gary Hayslip being like, I cooked this rice dish because I cooked for my siblings, because I took care of my siblings growing up, and this is what was in the kitchen. So it's hard for me to give you one dish, and I will leave you on the cliffhanger, which is tune into the episodes to choose what you think was the best dish. But you've cooked a lot of really amazing stuff that's even tastier than it looks on camera.
Seen the show, Ben, and it's like, man, I'm like, the food looks delicious, so very jealous. And I'm like, I'm sure there's several that you can probably think of, and it's just like hard though, because it seems like all the dishes that when they're done, I'm like, oh my god, that's like 4-star level delicious. So that's
The other thing to do is like, yes, you see it on LinkedIn, you see the food, but one of the things that we're really excited about, and it's just like a maturation of the show, is when we shoot an episode, the partner can host security leaders, they can host partners, they can host customers, and it turns into a live tasting event. So in that format, you get to see how the show is made, but also you get to try the food and you learn about how the dish is done. And so We don't want to keep people only in the asynchronous digital realm of what we do. Like we want to bring people into the kitchen, literally. We have Black Hat coming up next week, which I know you'll join us for
Very
some of our shows, and you'll actually see for the first time how not just the show is done, but you could decide for yourself what food was the winner.
Now, well, Ben, another question I have for you, and this is more on the ends of our mid-career folks maybe getting to that senior level role, or even our seniors looking into their C-suite next steps. When it comes into being ready to become like a CISO or a CEO or making that next step up, what were some things that you faced that you thought if you could go back in time and give yourself some advice to make those steps or progressions easier, that you'd love to have had that advice that you can give today?
Really good question. I want to give the caveat. I don't know if I'm the best person to say how to become a CISO. That being said, having been around security leaders and working hand in hand with them, obviously we touched on things that I think they deeply understand from like a soft skills standpoint and in a business context. I'll answer it through the realm of like a CEO. And obviously this has been a journey for me and constant evolution, and I want to get better at it. I would say there's two things. One is have a bias to action. I think a lot of people experience imposter syndrome. I think they feel like things have to be perfect. They have to know everything before they feel comfortable doing it. If you told me 4 years ago we'd be building a cooking show, I'd be like, who is that person? And I don't know who that person is, in my own reflection of myself. And it just was doing things, creating things, doing things that people find value in. And like that story gets written for itself. So it's definitely biased to action. Just do the thing. It might not be perfect. And then secondarily to that, I would say, do the work that you want to do before you've been hired to do it, or before you've been told to do it. And I think what that does is twofold. It means that it tells your senior leadership or whoever your hiring manager is, you deeply understand the business enough to know what needs to get done, because that's really important. A lot of people don't really know until they get into the function. So if you're naturally thinking about what that looks like and you're proactive, that's super foundational. Secondarily, if you show that you can do the work before you're hired to do it, why wouldn't that hiring manager take a chance on you? Because they've already seen that you can do the work, or you're actually pretty good at it, or you can get better at it, versus someone that is telling them that they can do the work, but they haven't really seen it intimately. And so I think it's a combination of not doing so much unwarranted, but finding opportunities to bring value and being willing to not look at your job as I get paid to do X and I'm just going to do that. I think you could go much further if you expanded and you looked at it as like skill development in the process. That would be my second piece of advice.
That is fire advice, by the way, Ben. We have to wrap up with two final questions, which these are my two favorite questions, honestly. But as a huge thank you for coming on first, though, we will be sending you an awesome link to the GingerHacker Initiative / GingerHacker swag shop to pick out a cool item of your choice. As a huge thank you for coming on to the channel. So huge thanks, Ben, for letting us take some time out of your day. And we have some cool stuff on there, from hoodies, shirts, shot glasses, mouse pads, a bunch of cool, interesting swag we've developed and made to help promote what we do here at GingerHacker Initiative and the GingerHacker YouTube channel. So just first off, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. I feel like I need to pick your brain because we need a merch store. We have these aprons that we give to guests, but we've never really like sold them. Not that we want it to be like this like big profit thing, but I think there's some cool swag that we could probably do. And I didn't even know about that you guys had swag at GingerHacker.
Oh man. We'll talk offline and we'll get you through that process of it, because it's actually a lot of fun. And it's just fun to make stuff. I have like, even my community, we make up cool shirt designs, cool stickers. It's really fun. That could be a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. But last two questions we have for you, Ben. When you're not doing Cooking with CISOs and anything reference cyber, what do you do for fun? What are you doing to unplug, recharging for the week, getting ready for that next Monday?
I love it. So I have two things that come to mind, and I didn't know these questions before for the audience that's listening, I'm big into like, this is a cool way of putting it, but I call it biohacking, which is I love cold plunge and sauna. I find that those are two things that help me regulate my nervous system. They're conditional things that you can implement that you're in control of, and I just feel better. So if anyone like loves to sauna or cold plunge, like let me know. Second is my wife and I have like two wiener dogs. We love taking walks. Like they love being off leash. So we'll just go out we're in the New Jersey area, very close to New York, and we'll just find trails and let them off leash. And it's our time to just catch up and
it's fun.
Tap into each other's weeks, our quality time.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Had a wiener dog growing up with my mom, and it was awesome. I now have two shepherds, which are They're
Oh,
just
nice.
crazy. They're just crazy dogs, and I love them to pieces. Well, Ben, this has been fantastic. I'm so excited to get to see you next week, also at Black Hat. I know you guys will be there as well, doing some additional filming for Cooking with CISOs. So excited to come on to the set. Fun, amazing. Last question we love to ask our folks before we sign off is, what's the last piece of advice you'd give somebody trying to break into cyber?
Ask for help and ask for feedback. I think it can be sometimes overdone, but I would say if there is someone that you are watching online or in a role that you have deep respect for, just simply humble yourself and say, look, I really want to get to where you are. Obviously there's a lot of steps that you took to get there. Would you be willing to give me 10 to 15 minutes so I can pick your brain? If you don't ask, you definitely won't get the opportunity. And so I think that would be my recommendation, is in a genuine way, ask for feedback or ask for help. You'd be shocked how many people are willing to help.
Amazing feedback, Ben. Well, everybody, that's going to be the show today. Please like, comment, subscribe, drop what your favorite comment was today on the show, and everybody, will see you on the next video.